Hey everybody. So I have to fill out my sensory evaluation forms for my Stanford class, which I'm teaching tonight. So I thought you might want to do that with me and see how I taste. I'm going to be tasting two different cheeses side by side, same style. The first, we're just going to do the form together. So the first thing I'm going to do is analyze based on the appearance of the cheese. Is there, and this is where I'm starting, some of you will recognize this from the rind. Is there a cream line? No. Are there holes? Yes, there are, sort of like classic Swiss cheese holes. No cracks, no fissures. The rind color and texture is wax. And the paste interior color and texture is actually a pretty beautiful deep yellow, buttercup yellow interior. And the texture is firm, and I'm gonna cut a little piece, but just so it's easier to play with. There's the hole. Very pliable, very elastic. So firm, but pliable. Okay, next up, we're gonna analyze the texture visually and also in my mouth. So firmness, soft, semi-soft, firm, or hard. This would be firm. Elasticity, absent, low, moderate, or high. I would say it is very elastic. It is like you can bend it, bend it, bend it, bend it, bend it, not breaking, not breaking, not breaking. It's like doing a back bend, and it still comes back up. So very elastic. Granularity, certainly it doesn't look granular. I'm gonna say the granularity is absent. And the mouthfeel, coating, no. Gummy, unfortunately, yes, a little bit. Not waxy, but it's a little bit like a stick of chewing gum. Okay, next up is taste. Taste is where we're gonna analyze using our tongues, which are actually pretty limited. So using your mouth, but you don't want your nose to intervene. So I'm actually gonna hold my nose while I taste. I'm looking to analyze the sweetness, the saltiness, the bitterness, and the acidity, but I don't want my nose to get involved. So. Okay, sweetness and acidity tend to work in opposition to one another. So low acid tends to be more sweet. And I'm getting really like very little acidity here. I guess I won't say it's absent, but like very slight. The sweetness, however, is really pronounced. This is not very salty. I'm gonna say the salt is slight to moderate and really no bitterness whatsoever. Umami would be this kind of fifth taste, this savory quality. I'm gonna say there's really not a lot of umami going on here. It's like a kind of like addictive, compulsively edible savory quality. For me, I tend to find it in cheese when there is a balanced presence of the four major tastes. And since we have no bitterness and very little acidity, it's unlikely we're gonna have a lot of umami because you need all four. So I'm gonna say absent to slight. Trigeminal, these are sensations you actually get in your mouth. Warming, cooling, tingling, prickly, astringency, nada. I'm not getting anything. No trigeminal action. Okay, next up is aroma. So this is what does my nose say it smells like? So lots of smells in the milk, cream, lactic world. It smells milky. It has a kind of no meaty or animal-y smells. not really nutty or smoky, no vegetable or mushroom, no herbaceous or resinous. I am getting some fruit ferments, in particular ferments. And I'm actually going to go back and say, yes, I'm getting some things on the animal front. It sort of smells like I just went running, which I did, but more strongly than I myself smell. So it's pretty mild, slightly footy. And really it reminds me of Swiss cheese from the deli, like slicing Swiss. Okay, on to flavor. Flavor is where your nose and your mouth work together. So this is tasting without plugging your nose, and your sense of smell is really going to impact what it is you think you're tasting. It's your retronasal impressions of flavor are a big driver here. So I should get a lot of the same things I got when I just smelled it with my nose, but hopefully more, maybe more and different. And really what I'm getting more strongly is that Swiss cheese, what I think of as Swiss cheese flavor. I call it sweet feet in my book. I don't really care for Swiss cheese from the deli, and so this is not my personal favorite, but definitely it has that taste from the propionic bacteria that are causing the holes in the cheese. So intensity, in summary, on a scale of 1 to 5, the intensity is, it's not super intense or super strong. I'm going to give it a 2. The persistence, how long do I taste it after I swallow? It's got some persistence. I'm going to give it a 3. And then hedonic is just my own personal, how much do I personally like it? While I like all cheese, like this is my absolute least favorite flavor profile. So I'm going to give it a 1. If there was a cheese that I didn't like, it would be Swiss cheese from the deli. So that is my roundup. I'm going to taste this cheese next. So, appearance. No cream line, no holes, no cracks, no fissures. This has a rind that looks very different. It's a natural rind, so no wax. The rind is mottled orangey brown. It's relatively smooth, sort of dry, hard. I would call it a crust, not a skin. So I know it's not like an edible rind, a rind that I'm probably going to want to eat. The paste color is even more, it's kind of hard to see, but it's deeper yellow than the previous cheese. And it's darker brown under the rind. That's pretty typical in aged cheeses. You're gonna see the change in color as you move from the center to the exterior. There's also little white clusters, patches in the paste of the cheese. Yeah, there you go. Typical around 9 months and up. These, I happen to know, are tyrosine, amino acid, crystallized amino acid, which happens in aged cheeses. Okay, so let's move on to the texture. I'm gonna cut the rind, I'm gonna move this out of the way. Goodbye. I'm gonna cut the rind off. And I always wanna smell before I taste, but I'm not gonna do that. I am just going to consider the firmness. So this is firm, not hard. Elasticity, it's pretty pliable, but definitely not doing what the other one was doing. We were getting a break. So I'm gonna say very moderate on elasticity. Granularity, it doesn't look hard and dry like Parmesan, but and it's very dense and fudgy. If I bite into one of those little tyrosine crystals, I get some granularity, but I'm gonna go low here. The mouthfeel is not coating, nor is it gummy, nor is it waxy. I'm gonna say it is fudgy. That is what it reminds me of. And dense. Okay, now on to taste. So it's really weird to consciously taste without your nose. You realize like how limited your mouth is. Okay, acidity reads with like saliva on the sides of the mouth, on the, like my mouth waters when I'm tasting something high in acid, and that's actually happening pretty significantly here. Remember I mentioned acidity and sweetness tend to work in balance, in opposition with one another. While this is still a moderately sweet cheese, it's also got more pronounced acidity. It has some bitter notes, and it has more salt than the previous cheese. It's got a slight bitterness, not in a bad way, but like bitter greens, think of like broccoli rabe, and moderate salt. And interestingly, but I guess not surprisingly, I'm holding my breath. That umami savor is much more present than in the previous cheese. So I'm going to give this between a moderate and a pronounced for umami. On the trigeminal, definitely have some tingly and prickly trigeminal sensations. Think about eating a piece of pineapple when it makes your tongue feel hairy. That's what's happening here. Okay, aroma. What is my nose smelling when I smell this cheese? It helps to smell where you've like freshly cut the cheese. It just releases a lot more aromatic compounds. So while the first cheese had a lot of milky aroma, this is more concentrated. So milk, but more like cooked milk. Definitely more nut and toast, toasted nuts, roasted nuts. And it doesn't have that sweet feet Swiss cheese thing, but it does have like a kind of a cured meat, saucisson sec aroma to it. I'm gonna write that down. Okay, let's go for flavor. So what do I get when I actually eat it with my nose unplugged? First of all, there's just a lot more flavor. It's a lot more complex. There's a lot more layers. It's harder for me to like parse what I'm tasting, which is a really good sign with cheese. It means there's a lot going on. So I feel like everything is anchored in that scalded milk, sweet scalded milk base of flavor. You get a lot more fruitiness and fermentation when you're tasting with your nose unplugged. So those the taste of acidity that my tongue was getting. Now I'm getting sort of red fruity flavor that goes along with that tart red fruit. Like cherry, and what are those like bougie little berries you get at the farmer's market? Little red, like fresh currants, I think they are. Definitely all of that toasted, roasted nut. And I'm also getting some pineapple on the finish, which I guess makes sense because of that trigeminal prickly sensation. The intensity of this cheese is much greater than the previous cheese. And I'm gonna give it a 4. And persistence too. You keep tasting it and tasting it. You kind of get waves of flavor after you swallow. I'm gonna give this a 4. I love this cheese. It is what made me learn that Swiss cheese as a style is not all terrible. It's not all sweet feet. And this one is not actually Swiss, it's American. But it's just a really brilliantly executed and consistently fantastic cheese. I'm gonna give it a 5 for hedonic. The main thing we're looking to illustrate in class tonight is sort of the difference in milk origin. The first cheese is a more industrially produced pasteurized cow's milk cheese. And the second is a farmstead, so made by the farm that produces the raw cow's milk from which the cheese is made, exclusively grass-fed. So this is only made in the spring and summer months when the cows are outside eating grass. The cheese is not made during the winter when the cows are inside eating dry grass, hay. So you have a very sort of seasonal, artisanal cheese making approach. And you can't just credit the difference in milk to the differences in flavor. There's a lot of choices in the cheese making process, and in particular here in the aging process, that are gonna intensify the flavor and give us more opportunities for complexity. But really it's an excellent example of a kind of industrial scale production of an Alpine cheese recipe versus a artisanal scale of an Alpine cheese recipe. Big difference in cost as a result of these things. This is aged for 9 to 14 months. The wheels are turned by hand. They're brine washed. It's very labor intensive. But the two cheeses we're tasting side by side are Jarlsberg, which is like a Swiss Emmentaler recipe, but it is actually not made in Switzerland, and Pleasant Ridge Reserve, made in Dodgeville, Wisconsin. So that's what I got for you. I gotta go post these notes for my class. Okay, see ya.